Unaware the wife he ignored was about to close a 60 billion contract, billionaire husband left his wife and sick child. For his mistress, what she did next shocked him. He didn't just walk out. He stood at the foot of a hospital bed, looked at his son struggling to breathe, then turned his back on both of them. The smell of antiseptic filled the room as Anna Morgan held their weak 8-year-old boy, Liam, in her arms. Her husband, Mark, billionaire investor, perfectly dressed, perfectly cold, adjusted his cufflinks and said, "I can't do this anymore. You're draining me, Anna." The words hit harder than any storm. Anna's hands shook as she tried to keep Liam calm. The machines beeped softly around them. Mark grabbed the small overnight suitcase she had packed so he could stay by Liam's side, walked to the door, and left without touching his son's hand. On the other side of that door, his world was already waiting. A luxury penthouse, a new life, and a mistress who whispered that he deserved better. He thought he was trading a tired wife and a sick child for excitement and freedom. He thought Anna would stay stuck, buried under hospital bills and quiet tears. He thought she would beg. What he never knew was this: the woman he ignored in that hospital room was days away from closing a 60 billion contract. While he texted his mistress from hotel rooms and secret dinners, Anna was the one foreign investors called. While he complained she was too busy, she was the mind behind a deal that would shake the entire financial world and rewrite both of their futures. What she did next wouldn't just change her life, it would shatter everything he thought he controlled. On the same week he moved in with his mistress, Anna would sit at the head of a massive conference table, cameras flashing, and sign a contract that turned her into the kind of power he never believed she could be. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you leave without subscribing, it's like letting Anna's voice be ignored again. When you subscribe, you stand with every woman who was underestimated, every child left behind, and every quiet heart that chose to rise instead of break. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. The alarm did not even finish ringing before Anna Morgan's eyes shot open. It wasn't the sound that woke her. It was the sharp, painful cough coming from the small bedroom across the hall. In one fluid motion, she rushed toward the cough, her bare feet hitting the cold floor with urgency. She did not hesitate, did not stop, did not think of herself. Her whole world lived in that room. Anna, 36 years old, mother of one, and one of the brightest negotiators in her field, pushed open her son's door. The early morning light slid in through the half-closed blinds, striping the room with pale gold. Liam, her 8-year-old boy, lay curled up, breathing hard, sweat clinging to his forehead. She crossed the room quickly. "Liam," she whispered, voice steady but soft. "It's okay. Mommy's here." This was who Anna was: steady, focused, selfless. The kind of woman who remembered every doctor's instruction, every medication schedule, every hopeful sign. She kept track of Liam's needs with the precision of someone who had already given up sleep, comfort, and half her life just to keep him safe. She did all of it without complaint. On the nightstand beside his bed, her laptop sat open, its screen still glowing from work she had been doing before finally closing her eyes for an hour. Rows of financial models filled the display. At the top of the spreadsheet, a small label read, "Projected valuation, $60,000 billion, confidential draft." She looked at the number for a second and whispered, almost to herself, "If this works, it could change everything for us." Numbers, forecasts, negotiation notes. This was her other reality. By day and too often by night, Anna worked as a lead negotiator for a global investment firm, the same one that had once offered her a senior role before she put her dreams on hold to support her husband's first company. She balanced motherhood and high-stakes finance with a quiet fearlessness most people never saw. It wasn't inherited wealth or luck that brought her here. Anna came from almost nothing. A brief flash of memory crossed her mind, years ago in a small rented office with peeling paint. She remembered sitting nervously across from her mentor, a sharp-eyed woman named Grace, who once told her, "Anna, you have a gift for seeing value where others don't. Don't let anyone dim that." That sentence lived inside her. It shaped her, strengthened her, guided her. The office she eventually built, The small savings she grew, the respect she earned, none of it came easy. Anna learned how to survive on grit, brick by brick, night after night, while Mark worked on his own rise and slept soundly through hers. She measured Liam's morning medicine, checked the dosage twice, and placed the spoon carefully against his lips. He swallowed weakly. Only when his breathing eased a little did she let out the breath she was holding. She brushed a hand through his hair. "I'll be right outside, okay? Call me if you feel worse." Liam nodded faintly. Anna stepped into the hallway, the weight of two different worlds pressing on her shoulders. The fragile world in Liam's bedroom, and the ruthless financial world waiting on her laptop. Her husband, Mark Morgan, 39 years old, tall, charming, and now a billionaire investor after taking his firm public, walked into the hallway at that moment. He smelled of expensive cologne. His suit was sharp. His watch alone could pay half of Liam's hospital bills if it came to that. He didn't glance into Liam's room. He headed straight for the mirror near the front door instead, adjusting his tie with the polished confidence that made strangers admire him at first sight. Behind closed doors, his attention was almost always somewhere else. Anywhere else. He walked right past Anna's framed certificate on the wall. Strategic Negotiator of the Year. She had earned it before she turned down a major promotion to keep their home steady while his company burned cash in the early years. Mark passed the frame like it didn't exist. He did that every day. "You look tired," he said casually, still not looking at her. "Maybe you're working too much again." Anna swallowed her irritation. "Liam had a rough night. I tried to talk to you about it yesterday, and also about the deal I'm leading." "Anna," he cut in, reaching for his watch. "We'll talk later. I'm running late. I've got investors flying in and a lunch meeting." It was always later. He grabbed his briefcase, brushing off her attempt at a real conversation. This had become their pattern. Her trying, him avoiding, her carrying the load, him drifting farther away, while telling himself work came first. As he stepped toward the door, something caught her eye. A faint smear, pink, glossy, on the collar of his crisp white shirt. Lipstick. Anna froze. Not visibly, not loudly, but something in her heart shifted. Like a warning she wished she could ignore. She said nothing. Her face stayed calm. Her hands stayed still. But her eyes followed the stain as Mark slipped past her and opened the door. "I'll be home late," he said, already halfway outside. "Of course you will," she whispered, but only after the door clicked shut. Her heart pounded, not because she wanted to start a fight, but because deep down she knew this was not an accident, not a misunderstanding. Something deeper, something dangerous was growing beneath the surface of their marriage, and the lipstick was only the beginning. As she turned back toward Liam's room, her phone buzzed on the console table. An unknown number flashed on the screen. One short message appeared. "We need to talk." She didn't know it yet, but that message was tied to the same secret number that had been calling Mark for days, and it would pull her deeper into the truth he was trying to hide. The sound of clinking glasses hit Anna before she even stepped through the restaurant doorway. It wasn't the gentle kind of celebration sound. It was loud, sharp, careless, the kind that made her chest tighten because she already suspected what she might find. And she was right. There, at a long, polished table near the center of the upscale dining hall, sat her husband, Mark Morgan. 39, immaculate suit, confident smile. Every inch the powerful businessman he wanted the world to see. He leaned toward two other wealthy investors, laughing at something one of them said. His phone rested low in his hand, half under the table. He wasn't looking at the men. He wasn't really listening either. He was texting, fast, secretly. Anna stood near the entrance for a moment, unnoticed, a quiet observer in a room full of loud, important people. She hadn't followed him. She knew his schedule because she had helped his assistant finalize it the night before, after putting Liam to bed. When he forgot an important file he needed for his upcoming pitch, she couldn't reach him on the phone. So she checked the calendar, saw the lunch location, and brought the document herself. Her husband didn't notice her at first. He only looked up when a server stepped closer and asked, "Sir, is this your wife?" Mark's head jerked up. Surprise washed over his face. Not warmth, not pride. "Anna," he said, "what are you doing here?" She held out the file. "You forgot this on the counter. You said you needed it for the investor deck. He took it quickly, too quickly. His fingers brushed hers, but there was no gratitude in his eyes, only irritation at being interrupted. Anna stepped back, watching how he hid his phone under his napkin. She noticed the name of the contact flashing for a second before the screen dimmed. Private number. He pressed decline. On Anna's own phone screen, a small preview of a new voicemail appeared at the top. Anna, we need your input before we finalize the $60 billion proposal outline. It was from her manager at the investment firm. For a brief second, the room, the noise, the smell of expensive food, all of it blurred as the words sank in. This was the deal, the one she had been modeling for months, the one she had tried to tell Mark about the night before. Her thumb hovered over the voicemail notification, but before she could listen, Mark shifted in his seat like he wanted the subject to disappear. Your phone keeps buzzing, she said quietly. It's nothing, Mark replied, already glancing at his own screen again. Work stuff. Anna glanced at the investors. They looked relaxed, entertained. No one seemed bothered by his distraction, but something in his voice felt tight. He cleared his throat. You should go back home. Liam needs you. There it was again, the gentle push, the subtle dismissal he used whenever she tried to step into his world instead of only supporting it from the shadows. Anna nodded, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Mark, I wanted to talk to you tonight. I have something important happening at work. A big opportunity. He cut her off. Anna, we'll talk later. I'm in the middle of something. The words landed heavy inside her. He didn't ask what the opportunity was. He didn't even pretend to care. She tried again, keeping her voice steady. It's important. It could change a lot for us. For Liam. Mark sighed impatiently. Please, not now. Just not now. He turned away from her and back to the men at the table. His body language told her everything. She didn't belong here. Not in his meetings, not in his victories, not in the version of himself he performed in front of others. And then it happened. His phone lit up once more. Mark glanced at the screen, but it wasn't the name that caught Anna's attention. It was the way his face reacted. He flinched. For a brief second, panic crossed his features. His thumb hit decline again. Then he flipped the phone face down on the table, hiding the screen completely. Anna's breath stalled. Why hide it so quickly? He leaned slightly to the side, turning his back to her. His voice dropped to a whisper, almost too soft to hear. Not now, she's here. Anna heard every word. She. Who was she? The investors didn't notice. But his tone wasn't the tone of a man talking about his wife. It was the tone of someone protecting a secret. Her elbows stiffened at her sides. Her shoulders straightened. She didn't raise her voice or demand answers. She simply watched how his hand hovered over the phone, restless, like he was counting the seconds until she left so he could message whoever was on the other side of private number. A memory tugged at her. Their honeymoon, a sunny beach, her head on his shoulder, his arms around her as he said, Anna, I'll always protect this family. No matter where life takes us, I'm yours, and you're mine. That Mark felt like a stranger now. She stepped away from the table without another word. She didn't trust her voice to come out steady if she stayed. As the elevator doors closed in front of her, she placed a hand against the cool metal and took a slow breath, fighting to hold herself together long enough to get home to Liam. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her manager. It was a text from the same private number that had just been calling Mark. 3 words. We need to talk. Anna stared at the number, unaware that the truth behind it, and the person using it, would pull her into a level of betrayal far worse than she imagined. The night hit like a storm, fast, brutal, and without warning. Anna Morgan shot upright in bed, heart hammering, to the sound of her son gasping for air. Liam's coughing wasn't normal. It was sharp, painful, and desperate. She bolted from her room and rushed into his, flicking on a soft lamp. Liam lay curled on his side, clutching his chest, each breath sounding like it scraped his lungs. Mom, it hurts, he whispered. Anna didn't hesitate. She slid her arms under him and held him close, one hand rubbing his back in slow circles. It's okay, baby, she murmured, though fear clawed at her. I'm here. Mommy's here. She grabbed her phone with her free hand and called the pediatric clinic's emergency line. Her voice stayed calm as she described his symptoms: short, fast breaths, tight chest, fever. The nurse on the line recognized Anna's number by now. "You've done everything right so far. Keep monitoring his breathing. If it gets any worse, bring him in immediately." "Thank you," Anna said quietly, even though the reassurance did little to ease the knot in her stomach. She hung up and laid Liam gently back on his pillows. She wiped his forehead with a cool cloth and watched his chest rise and fall, counting each breath. Only when his coughing softened into weak sighs did she reach for her laptop. Life didn't pause, not even for a sick child. Her email inbox was full: meeting requests, updated models, questions from the foreign investor team about tomorrow's briefing. Her company needed her ready. The world on that screen expected her to think clearly, even when her world at home was shaking. A voicemail icon blinked. She put one earbud in and pressed play. "Anna, it's Laura," her manager said, voice warm but urgent. "I hope everything is okay with Liam. We need you sharp for negotiations next week. This could be monumental. Call me first thing in the morning." In the background, a softer voice, Laura's assistant, could be heard saying, "They're already calling it the $60 billion deal." The phrase slipped through the speaker like a whisper and landed heavy in Anna's chest. This was the deal. The same opportunity she had tried to mention to Mark at the restaurant, the one he brushed aside. Anna's jaw tightened. She closed her eyes and, for a moment, drifted back years. Before Liam, before Mark became the rising star, before their marriage felt like a business negotiation she was losing. She had sat in a bright conference room, hands clasped, heart racing. A hiring partner from a major firm had just told her, "We'd like to bring you in as a senior lead. This track could put you on the partner path in a few years." It had been her dream. That same evening, Mark had come home with his own big news. An investor wanted to fund his new company. "Anna," he said, taking her hands, "I can't do this alone. I need you. We need this. If you stay in that job, who's going to keep us stable while I build?" She had loved him, so she gave up the offer. For him, for them. She became the steady paycheck, the emotional support, the quiet planner. She didn't complain. She genuinely believed they were building the dream together. Back in the present, Anna opened her eyes and looked at Liam. "Mommy's not going anywhere," she whispered, more to herself than to him. She checked her messages. Still nothing from Mark. Her mind replayed the details. The lipstick on his collar, the secret texts, the whispered, "Not now. She's here." The private number that had called him, then messaged her. Her chest tightened. She texted him anyway. "Liam's not well. Call me." Minutes passed. Nothing. She adjusted Liam's blanket and refilled his water glass, checking his temperature again. She sat by his bedside, one hand on his arm, the other gripping her phone. Finally it buzzed. Her heart leapt, then fell. A message from Mark. "I'll be home late. No question about Liam. No panic. No, is he okay?" Anna stared at the screen, disbelief mixing with something sharper, an emotion she didn't name yet. She typed quickly, "Did you see my message about Liam? He's really sick." She watched the typing bubbles appear, disappear, appear again, then vanish completely. Nothing. The hurt was no longer surprising. It was just heavier than yesterday. She walked quietly to the living room, leaving Liam's door slightly open so she could still hear him. She stood by the window, city lights flickering in the distance like a world that didn't care. "How did we get here?" she whispered. Her phone buzzed again. A picture message. From an unknown number. Anna opened it. Her husband, laughing, leaning in close to a woman with long dark hair, his arm around her waist, a wine glass in his hand. The angle of the shot made it clear. They were in a hotel bar, not a business meeting. The sender ID matched the same anonymous number that had texted her earlier. Private number. Her world cracked a little more. She didn't know it yet, but the woman in that picture wasn't just going to destroy her marriage. She was about to drag Mark's entire empire into the fire with him. Anna pushed through the tall glass doors of Mark's office building so quickly that the security guard barely had time to greet her. She clutched a thick envelope against her chest. Liam's latest test results and a note from the specialist. She wasn't here to scream or accuse. She just wanted Mark to see them, to understand how serious their son's condition was before things got worse. She had arranged for their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Harris, to sit with Liam for an hour. She had left strict instructions, numbers taped by the phone, medicine pre-measured, every step calculated, every risk minimized. But the moment Anna stepped into the lobby, something else hit her. The air smelled different, stronger, sharper. A sweet, floral perfume floated in the space. Not hers, not anything she owned, and definitely not something Mark would wear. Her heartbeat tapped faster. She moved toward the elevator, the envelope trembling slightly in her hands. By the time the doors opened on the 10th floor, Mark's private floor, the scent was even stronger. The doors slid back to reveal a small reception area. Behind the desk sat Jenny Moore, a warm woman in her mid-40s who had worked with Mark for years. Jenny had seen Anna bring lunch during late nights, had watched her sit in the lobby with sleeping baby Liam when Mark was too busy to come downstairs. Jenny knew more history than most. She stood the moment she saw Anna. "Anna, hi, is everything okay?" "Just dropping something for Mark," Anna said, her voice calm but thin. "It's about Liam." Jenny's expression softened with worry. Her eyes flicked toward Mark's closed office door, then back at Anna. "He's not in right now." Anna swallowed. "Out for a meeting?" Jenny hesitated. "He's been out a lot lately." She lowered her voice. "Not always with clients." Anna's fingers tightened around the envelope. "Do you know who he's with?" Jenny looked torn. She wasn't a gossip, but she cared about Anna. "A woman," she said quietly. "Younger, dark hair, same perfume you're smelling now. They usually leave together when the floor gets quiet." There it was. Not suspicion, not guessing. Confirmation. "You deserve to know," Jenny added softly. "You've always been the one holding things together." Anna nodded. She forced a small, grateful smile, though her stomach twisted. "Thank you for telling me." Jenny reached across the desk and gently squeezed her hand. "You deserve better than secrets." Anna didn't trust herself to answer. Instead, she walked toward Mark's office door and pushed it open. The perfume smell hit her instantly. Heavy. Recent. The room itself was neat. Mark was always careful about appearances, but the atmosphere felt wrong. Too lived in for business. Too intimate for a workplace. A jacket, definitely not Mark's, hung over the back of his visitor chair. A lipstick-stained napkin sat balled up in the trash. On the corner of his desk, a wine glass rested beside a half-empty bottle. It looked like a private lounge after hours, not a CEO's office. Her mind shifted into survival mode. Collect, process, breathe. She carefully placed the envelope on the center of his desk and straightened it, lining it up with the edge. The name on the label, Liam Morgan, Pulmonary Function Results, stared back at her. It felt symbolic, a mother begging the father of her child to show up. But he wasn't here, not for her, not for Liam. She took one last look at the room, at the glass, the napkin, the jacket, and stepped out, thanking Jenny on her way to the elevator. As the elevator descended, she pressed a hand against her chest. Not to calm herself, just to remind herself that her heart was still beating. She drove home on autopilot, eyes fixed on the road, thoughts racing, perfume, the photo, the secret number, the missed calls, the distance, everything lined up now. When she walked into the house, she set her keys down quietly. No slammed doors, no dramatic gestures. Noise would make the truth feel more real, and she needed a few more seconds of pretending it wasn't. Then she saw it. Mark's navy blue blazer tossed over the arm of the couch. It hadn't been there that morning. Her stomach sank. She stepped closer and slipped her hand into the inside pocket, the way she had done hundreds of times when he left receipts or pens behind. Her fingers closed around something stiff, a hotel access card, with bold numbers printed on the front. Room 804. Anna stared at it as if it might burn her fingers. Her pulse hammered. Her breath caught. Her vision sharpened. She wasn't imagining things. She wasn't overreacting. She wasn't paranoid. The truth was right here in her hand, and it was worse than she had ever wanted to believe. As she stood frozen in the living room, her phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with Mark's name. He was calling. The timing, she was about to find out, would reveal everything. The moment Anna stepped through Liam's bedroom door that night, she knew things had gone from bad to terrifying. He wasn't just coughing anymore. He was burning up. His skin was so hot she flinched when she touched his forehead. His breathing came in short, sharp bursts, each one weaker than the last. "Mom," Liam whispered, voice cracking. "It hurts." Anna's chest squeezed. "I'm here," she said, lifting him gently into her arms. His body trembled against her. "I've got you. I won't leave you." The house felt too quiet, too empty, the kind of silence that made fear echo louder. She grabbed her phone and dialed Mark. Ring, ring, ring. Voicemail. She forced her voice steady. "Mark, please call back. It's Liam. He's getting worse. I think I need to take him in." She hung up and set the phone beside the bed. She soaked a cloth in cool water and placed it across Liam's forehead, whispering comfort between his shaky breaths. Minutes crawled by. No call. She tried again. Ring, ring, ring. Still nothing. Her hands shook slightly. These were the same hands that had helped steady Mark in his early business failures, that had carried the family through long nights, that now held their son while Mark didn't even pick up the phone. Her screen lit up. A text. From Mark. "Can't talk. Busy. Busy." Anna stared at the word until it blurred. Her son was struggling to breathe. His son. Their son. She typed back quickly. "It's an emergency. Liam is really sick. Call me now." She watched the screen. Seconds passed. Then a full minute. Then 2. Nothing. Her anxiety spiked. She dialed him again. This time he answered, but his voice came through low and sharp, like her call was a problem to solve, not a cry for help. "Anna, stop calling. I told you I'm busy." Noise bled through the line behind him. Soft music, clinking glasses, laughter. A woman's voice, muffled but light. Anna's stomach twisted. "Mark," she said, fighting to keep her voice calm, "I'm not calling to bother you. Liam can't breathe well. He needs you." There was a pause, a long one. When he spoke again, his voice was flat. "I can't deal with this right now." The words sliced her open, and then she heard it, the familiar mocking laugh of a woman behind him, the mistress. "She's still calling?" The woman's voice floated through, amused. Anna felt her knees weaken. "Mark," she tried again. "Please. Your son." "I said stop," he snapped. His tone dropped so the woman wouldn't hear the rest. "I told you, I'm busy. Handle it." The line went dead. Anna stared at the phone, her hands suddenly cold. Busy. Her mind flashed back without her permission. Mark in a hospital room years ago, holding newborn Liam, eyes full of tears. "I'll never abandon you two," he'd said. "Never." The memory hurt now. She blinked hard, forcing herself back to the present. There was no time to cry, no time to ask why. Liam needed her. She leaned over him again. "Baby, stay with me, okay? Mommy's here." But his breathing grew more shallow. His eyelids fluttered. Then suddenly, his body went limp. "Liam!" Anna cried, panic tearing through her as she gently shook him. "Liam, open your eyes. Please." He didn't respond. Her heart felt like it stopped. She scooped him up, wrapped him in a blanket, grabbed her keys and ran. There was no thinking now, only instinct. She buckled him into the back seat, hands clumsy with fear, then sped toward the emergency clinic, every red light feeling like a personal attack. "Hold on," she whispered through tears as she drove. "Please hold on. Please." Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. She glanced at it for half a second. A picture. From Mark. He hadn't replied to her messages about Liam, but he had sent a photo. Mark and the mistress, smiling, her head on his shoulder, a wine glass in his hand. The timestamp on the image hit her like a punch. It matched the time she had first called him in panic. Her chest tightened so hard she almost missed her turn into the emergency entrance. She slammed the brakes, jumped out, and pulled Liam from the car, his body limp against her chest. "Help!" she screamed as she burst through the clinic doors. "Please, my son. He's not breathing right." Nurses and doctors rushed forward. Someone took Liam from her arms. The room blurred into movement. Voices, instructions, machines. Anna stood frozen, hands shaking violently, her lungs struggling to remember how to work. The last thing she saw before the doors swung shut behind the medical team was Liam's small hand slipping away from hers. And in the middle of that cold, white hallway, with no husband by her side and no guarantee her son would be okay, something inside her cracked so deeply it would never return to what it was. The hospital room door swung open so hard it slammed against the wall. Anna jerked awake in the uncomfortable plastic chair, heart pounding. She had slept in short, broken minutes, curled beside Liam's bed. Morning light slipped through the blinds in thin streaks, soft and pale, but the echo of the door ripped through the fragile calm. Mark stood there. Not like a father who had spent the night worrying. Not like a man who had driven too fast to see if his son was okay. He stood like someone who had arrived late to an appointment he resented. His jaw was tense, his hair perfectly styled, his suit crisp, his watch gleamed. He looked like he had slept well. Anna blinked, disoriented for half a second. Then reality snapped back. The night, the collapse, the doctors rushing Liam away, the hours of fear. Mark didn't ask a single question. He didn't step toward Liam's bed. He just said one sentence. I came to get my things. Her breath caught. Your things. Her voice was hoarse from crying. Mark walked in, shoulders stiff, eyes cold. His gaze swept over the room and finally landed on Liam, who lay sleeping under soft hospital light, an IV in his small arm. There should have been panic in Mark's eyes. Guilt, relief. There was nothing. Mark, Anna whispered, standing slowly. Liam collapsed. He couldn't breathe. They said if I'd waited any longer. I know, he interrupted, shrugging like she was repeating a minor inconvenience. You called. A lot. A lot? Anna stared at him. You ignored every call. You sent a picture with her while he looked away sharply. I told you I was busy. Busy, the word felt like a slap. Anna, you're always overwhelmed, he went on. Always dramatic, always making me feel like the bad guy. Her mouth fell open. You're the one who didn't show up, she said quietly. You're the one who left me alone. He waved a dismissive hand. We're not doing this here. Not in front of everyone. I just came to pick up my suitcase. He walked over to the small closet, the one she had neatly filled last night when she thought he might come from the office and stay. He pulled out the suitcase with practiced detachment. Mark, she said, her voice tighter now. Where were you? Out, he replied flatly. I needed space. With her? Anna asked. He didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. You've been so focused on your career lately, he said instead, turning the accusation around. I barely recognize you. You used to be supportive. Her mind flashed to every sacrifice. The job she turned down, the late nights with Liam while he traveled, the way she rebuilt her own career in the margins of his. My career? She repeated. I gave up my dream job so you could build yours. I covered our bills while your first company bled money. I did everything you asked. Mark slid a stack of shirts into the suitcase. That was years ago, he said. Things change. A memory cut through her. Young Mark standing in his parents' kitchen, his father leaning in with a low, hard voice. Never tie yourself to anything that slows you down. Business first, always. It made sense now. It wasn't that Mark suddenly became cruel. He had grown into a belief he'd been handed, and somewhere along the way, his own family became something that slowed him down. Anna swallowed. So what is this? She asked. You get a mistress, ignore your son almost dying, and now you're… What? Moving out? He zipped the suitcase. The sound was loud in the small room. I need a different environment, he said, not looking at her. A fresh start. She understands me. You don't. Not anymore. He walked to the foot of Liam's bed and stood there. For a second, Anna thought he might touch his son. She watched his hand, waiting for it to move. It didn't. He looked at Liam, weak, small, healing, and then at Anna, worn out and hollow. I can't do this anymore, Mark said quietly. You're draining me, Anna. The words hit her like a physical blow. They were the final cut in 1,000 small ones. He turned toward the door, suitcase in hand. I'll come by the house later for the rest of my thing, he added. Anna's legs trembled. She dropped back into the chair. Her body felt heavy, her heart strangely quiet, like it hadn't decided whether to break or turn to stone. A nurse stepped in moments later, startled to see Mark leaving, and Anna pale. "Ma'am," the nurse asked gently, "are you okay?" Anna nodded weakly, eyes fixed on Liam. "It's just us now," she whispered. She didn't know yet that this numbness, this hollow space inside her, was about to be filled with something stronger than she had ever felt. Something that wouldn't just keep her standing, it would lift her. The house was silent, not peaceful, sharpened, like a blade waiting to be chosen. Anna sat at the edge of the living room couch, a small lamp casting a soft pool of light over the chaos on the coffee table. Medical bills, insurance forms, Liam's prescription chart, copies of Mark's recent transactions, and printed screenshots of messages he thought she would never see. Her heart pounded too fast, torn between collapse and fight. On the opposite couch, Liam lay asleep, wrapped in a blanket, his breathing finally steady. The doctors had discharged him earlier under strict instructions: regular medication, monitoring, and an immediate follow-up. She kept him close tonight, closer than ever. Every time her eyes drifted to his small face, her fear and her purpose hardened together. "He deserves better than this," she whispered. The numbness from the hospital slowly gave way to heavy reflection. When had her life become this? When had the man she trusted turned into someone who could walk out on his child in a hospital bed? When had she decided her pain was a price she had to keep paying? A memory tugged at her. Years ago, she sat in a small office with her mentor, Grace Turner. Grace had been there long before Mark's success, long before the firm took Anna seriously. Grace had clasped her hands and said, "If you ever feel trapped, build a bigger door. Never shrink yourself to fit someone else's limits." Anna had loved that line. She thought it was about career ceilings, stubborn bosses, difficult clients. She hadn't realized she would one day need it to escape her own marriage. Back in the present, she inhaled slowly. The part of her that wanted to cry and scream was still there. But something else had started to form over it. A quiet determination. Not loud, not dramatic. Just steady. She reached for her laptop and opened her calendar. At the top of the screen, a reminder glowed in bold letters. Final briefing. $60 billion acquisition. Tomorrow, 6:10 a.m. For a few seconds, she stared at it. The weight of everything she built pressed against the fresh bruise of being abandoned. While Mark claimed she had changed, she had been holding two worlds together, their home and a deal big enough to shift entire markets. If he wanted to walk away, she wouldn't stop him, but he wasn't walking away clean. Anna began sorting the papers on the table into neat piles: email logs, travel receipts, payment records, GPS data from shared cloud accounts, credit card statements linked to hotel stays, room 804 repeating like a warning, perfume purchases listed under miscellaneous gifts. She wasn't guessing anymore. She was building a case. Her phone buzzed, slicing through the silence. Attorney Daniel Reeves. Daniel was in his early 50s, calm, sharp, the same lawyer who had helped them buy their house years before. He had always spoken to Anna like she was the rational one in the room. She answered. "Daniel?" "Anna," he said, voice warm but serious. "You sounded urgent earlier. Are you safe?" She glanced at Liam, then at the documents. "I'm safe," she said. "I'm just done. Tell me what happened." So she did. The ignored calls, the mistress, the hotel card, the hospital night. Mark walking out that morning with a suitcase instead of staying with his son. She didn't cry through the story. She didn't raise her voice. She laid it out the way she would present a negotiation, fact by fact, without hiding the cost. When she finished, there was a pause. "Anna," Daniel finally said, "you timed this perfectly." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "The evidence you've collected," he replied. "The financial logs, the hotel records, the messages, plus what our forensic accountant has already traced from his accounts. It all aligns. This is strong, legally strong." She pictured the quiet, sharp-eyed accountant she had met 2 weeks earlier in Daniel's office. She had already suspected then that Mark was funneling more than just personal money into his lifestyle. "I'm not doing this for revenge," Anna said. "I'm doing it for Liam. And for myself, as you should, Daniel said firmly. You supported him for years. You deserve legal protection, and your son deserves stability. What's the next step? Papers rustled on his end. Everything is prepared. The petition, the financial complaint, the custody request. I just need your signature tomorrow. Tomorrow, she repeated, glancing at the 6 a.m. reminder on her calendar. Yes, Daniel said. And Anna, are you ready for what comes next in the business world? She blinked. In the business world? You haven't checked today's financial news, have you? He asked. No. I've been at the hospital. There's a major deal about to hit every headline, Daniel said, and your name will be right at the center. A shiver ran through her. What deal? She whispered, even though she already knew. You'll see in the morning, he said gently. Get some rest if you can. The call ended. Anna stared at Liam sleeping peacefully, then at the mountain of evidence on the table. She didn't know it yet, but the $60 billion contract she had poured her heart and brain into was about to collide with her broken marriage. And everything Mark thought he controlled was about to flip. Before she could close her laptop, a new email notification appeared. From the investor team, subject line in bold, urgent. Anna, we need to confirm your leadership position before dawn. The meeting room buzzed the moment Anna stepped inside. Camera shutters snapped in rapid bursts. Executives in dark suits whispered over open folders. Assistants rushed between chairs with tablets and translation headsets. The tension in the air felt electric, like the seconds before a market opens on the biggest day of the year. Anna walked into all of it with calm, steady steps. Inside, her heart raced, but not with fear, with power. A long table ran down the center of the room. At its head sat the investor delegation, men and women flown in overnight from 3 continents. They weren't there for show. They were there because of the numbers Anna had put in front of them. The lead delegate, Mr. Alvarez, a tall man with silver hair and measured eyes, stood when he saw her. Ms. Morgan, he said warmly, extending his hand, the woman of the hour. Anna shook his hand. Thank you for trusting the process, she said. We trusted the numbers, he replied with a small smile, and the person behind them. His words landed hard. Her proposal, her research, her late nights, the same work Mark had dismissed as your little project. An assistant guided her to her seat. As soon as she sat, the room's noise softened into focused attention. Her mind flicked backward in quick flashes. Anna at the dining table at 2 a.m., laptop open, studying market models while Liam slept against her shoulder. Anna muting herself during a video call with foreign investors so she could settle Liam's cough, then switching back on as if nothing happened. Anna listening to Mark laugh off her ambitions. Anna, you're overthinking it. Just stick to the small deals. Leave the big ones to people who can handle pressure. Anna, finally accepting the firm's offer to lead this acquisition, promising herself and Liam, Mommy will make something better for us, I swear. The lead executive tapped the microphone. Let's begin. Silence settled. Anna took a breath, opened her laptop, and started. She walked through the proposal, phase by phase. Her voice was clear and steady. She explained risk scenarios, integration strategies, cultural factors between the merging entities. She projected cash flows and addressed regulatory concerns before anyone could raise them. Every question thrown at her, she answered. Every doubt she met with data. For once, her intelligence wasn't invisible. It was the center of the room. Her mentor's voice echoed faintly in her mind. If you ever feel trapped, build a bigger door. Today, she hadn't just built a door. She had built the whole room. After 2 hours of negotiations and clarifications, the final contract folder slid across the table toward her. The document represented months of work and years of quiet preparation. Mr. Alvarez lifted a pen. Ms. Morgan, if you're ready, your signature will finalize the acquisition. The market is waiting. Anna hesitated for a single breath. Not because she doubted herself, but because she understood the moment. This signature would not just change her career, it would change the balance of power in her life. She thought of Liam, of hospital nights, of Mark walking out, of sitting at home collecting proof while building billion-dollar models. Then she signed. The pen moved smoothly across the last page. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Executives clapped. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. Anna Morgan had just closed a $60 billion acquisition deal, the largest in her firm's history. Microphones pushed toward her. Miss Morgan, what does this mean for your company's position globally? How did you manage to secure terms this favorable? Is it true you insisted on a child health fund as part of the CSR clause? She answered calmly, one question at a time, never overselling, never shrinking. Then a reporter with bright red glasses leaned in. Ms. Morgan, she asked, does your husband know you're the one behind the deal everyone is talking about? The room quieted for a beat. Anna looked straight into the circle of cameras. Her eyes were calm, her posture unshaken. She let a small, almost secretive smile touch her lips. He will, she said. The cameras went wild. Her composed expression froze in every shot that would flood the internet in minutes. Anna stood taller than she ever had, not because the world finally saw her, but because she finally saw herself clearly. Somewhere in another part of the city, Mark still thought he was in control, but the world was already learning the truth. As the press kept shouting questions and executives moved in to congratulate her, Anna's mind drifted ahead. This wasn't the end of the story, it was the opening move. Outside, as she stepped through the building's glass doors, her phone buzzed. Mark was calling, unaware of what had just happened. At the same time, another call came in. Call waiting flashed on the screen from an unknown number linked to room 804. The war for her future was about to begin. Mark slammed through the double doors of the boardroom so hard they bounced off the walls. Executives jerked in their seats. Assistants scrambled to the edges of the room. Conversations died mid-sentence. His eyes shot straight to the large digital leadership screen at the far end. The same screen that always displayed his name at the top. But today, the bold letters that used to read, Mark Morgan, CEO, were gone. In their place, in cold corporate blue, leadership status, under review, board meeting, emergency session. Mark's face lost color. What is this? He demanded, marching toward the table. No one rushed to answer. The CFO, Harold West, a cautious man in his 60s, cleared his throat. Mark, maybe you should sit. I'm not sitting, Mark snapped. Someone explain. Harold exchanged looks with the other board members. Finally, pointing, he slid a thick envelope across the polished table. Mark grabbed it. His name was on the front. Mark Morgan. He tore it open. Inside was a formal letter, signed by Anna's lawyer, referencing petition for divorce grounds, infidelity, abandonment, misuse of marital and corporate assets. Attached were copies, invoices, hotel receipts, credit card statements, bank transfers, photos from room 804, screenshots of messages he thought he had deleted. His stomach lurched. How did she get all this? He whispered. Harold leaned back. She hired a forensic accountant weeks ago, he said. Your personal and company spending started to overlap. Mark's mind flashed back. Anna sitting across from a quiet, sharp-eyed accountant. Stacks of files on the desk. Her voice low but unwavering. I need every financial trail connected to my husband's accounts. Personal and business, no mistakes. The accountant nodding. Mrs. Morgan, if it's there, we'll find it. Weeks of quiet digging, late-night spreadsheets and cross-checks, all while Mark had assumed she was just stressed. Back in the boardroom, Mark slammed the envelope onto the table. This is personal. You can't use this here. Harold sighed. It became our problem when corporate funds showed up in your personal expenses. What funds? Mark demanded. Another board member slid forward a separate folder. Gifts purchased on company cards. Luxury travel listed as executive strategy retreats that match your stays in room 804. Wine and jewelry classified as client entertainment with no clients present. Mark's voice cracked. Those were relationship building. You know how this game works. Not with your mistress, the board member said plainly. Mark's mouth snapped shut. Silence wrapped around the room like a verdict. We lost 3 major investors this morning, Harold said. Mark's head jerked up. What? They pulled out, Harold continued. After Ms. Morgan's legal team filed a formal complaint and the article about her $60 billion deal went public, they questioned our internal controls. They don't want to be associated with a firm whose CEO mixes personal misconduct with corporate funds. Mark staggered back, feeling the floor tilt. The acquisition, he said desperately. We still have the acquisition, right? The market will calm down once. Anna Morgan closed that deal, Harold said quietly. Mark blinked. She? What? She was the lead negotiator, another board member said. The global headlines this morning, they're about her, not you. Anna, quiet, steady Anna, the wife he had brushed aside as too emotional, the woman he called overwhelmed and dramatic, the mastermind behind the biggest victory their industry had seen in years. What happens now? He asked, voice suddenly small. Harold folded his hands. Mark, the board voted this morning. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending investigation. We've appointed an interim leader until this is resolved. Suspended. He, the founder, the man who once believed he could never be replaced. He felt his throat tighten. He reached for his phone, almost on instinct. He dialed Sasha, the mistress. Voicemail. He texted her, no reply. He tried again. Finally, one message appeared. Mark, I can't be involved in this. I need stability. This is too messy. Then seconds later, don't contact me again. She was gone. Just like that. His company, his investors, his image, his mistress, all slipping through his fingers. I need to talk to Anna, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Harold shook his head slightly. She has nothing left to discuss with you, Mark. Not here. But Mark was already walking out of the boardroom, ignoring the whispers behind him. He stepped into the hallway and dialed her number. Ring, ring, ring. Across town in her firm's office, Anna's phone lit up on her desk. She glanced at the screen. Mark Morgan. Her expression didn't change. The phone rang again. She watched it quietly, then pressed decline. Back in the hallway, Mark froze, staring at his phone. Rejected. Shut out. Powerless. For the first time in his life, he understood what it felt like to be on the wrong side of a decision he couldn't influence. Anna's phone buzzed again seconds later, this time from Daniel, her lawyer. Anna, everything is ready. Are you prepared for the hearing? The courtroom door opened with a heavy push, and every head turned. Anna Morgan walked in. She didn't hurry. She didn't shrink. She didn't look at the man across the room. She walked with quiet fire, the kind that made people straighten in their seats without knowing why. At the defendant's table, Mark sat waiting. He looked nothing like the polished billionaire who once glided through charity galas. His suit was wrinkled, his hair slightly out of place, his eyes ringed with dark circles. The pages in front of him shook in his unsteady hands. He looked at Anna with desperate eyes. She didn't look back. The judge entered, banged the gavel once, and said, We are here today to address the divorce petition filed by Miss Anna Morgan against Mr. Mark Morgan. Both parties, please rise. Anna rose calmly. Mark rose shakily. Tension pressed against everyone's chest. The judge glanced at the files. Ms. Morgan, your representation has presented substantial evidence of infidelity, abandonment during a medical emergency, and misuse of marital and corporate assets. Before we begin, do you wish to add anything? For a moment, time folded. In Anna's mind, memories flickered. Mark holding her hand at their small wedding, smiling as he promised, I'll protect this family always. Mark pacing their first apartment, excited about his first investor, telling her he needed her more than her promotion. Mark holding newborn Liam, tears in his eyes, whispering, I'll never abandon you. Then the later memories, the lipstick on his collar, the unanswered calls, the photo from room 804, the night Liam collapsed, the morning he stood at the foot of their son's hospital bed and said, You're draining me, Anna, before walking out. All of it settled into one truth. She had already said everything that mattered. Her voice was calm when she answered, No, Your Honor. Everything that needed to be shown has already been shown. The judge nodded. Very well. Mark's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to make a brief statement. Mark swallowed, then faced Anna. I made mistakes, he began. I know I did. But Anna, you know me. You know I was under pressure. The business, the investors, everything. I lost myself. I thought she cared about me. I see now that I was wrong. His voice shook. He took a breath. Anna, if you give me one more chance. She didn't move. "Don't do this to us," he whispered. The courtroom went quiet. Every eye shifted to Anna. Would she soften? Would she look back at the man she had once loved? Anna lifted her chin slightly. "There is no us left, Mark," she said softly. "You did this to yourself." He closed his eyes as if the words were a final blow. The judge reviewed the documents one last time, then spoke with clear authority. Given the evidence of repeated infidelity and emotional abandonment, and given the documented incident of failing to respond during the minor child's medical emergency, this court grants Ms. Morgan full physical and legal custody of the minor child, Liam Morgan. Given the financial misconduct, including misuse of marital and corporate assets for personal relationships, this court grants Ms. Morgan a majority share of the marital assets and protection from any liability related to Mr. Morgan's pending corporate investigation. The divorce is finalized, effective immediately. The gavel fell with a single echoing crack. It was over. Anna exhaled. Not in triumph, not in rage, in release. The storm she had survived no longer had legal chains around her. The weight she had carried for years fell away. She gathered her documents and walked out of the courtroom. The sunlight outside felt different, warmer, clearer, like the world had opened a new path and was waiting to see what she would do with it. On the courthouse steps, her phone buzzed. A news notification popped up. $60 billion deal confirmed. Lead negotiator Anna Morgan named rising industry game changer. Anna smiled softly. Not a gloating smile, a free one. She lifted her face toward the sky. "Liam," she whispered, "everything I do now is for us." Behind her, Mark stepped out of the courthouse alone. No cameras, no board, no mistress. Just a man staring at the back of the woman he had underestimated. He watched her walk away, straight-backed, calm, unstoppable. "What have I done?" he murmured, voice barely audible. But Anna never turned around. She didn't need to. She had already risen. Daniel, her lawyer, joined her at the bottom of the steps. "Anna," he said quietly, "the board from your firm wants to meet next week. They're considering you for a leadership position after the deal you closed." Her eyes widened slightly. A new journey was already forming on the horizon. Husband pushed his wife out because his mother ordered it, unaware she was paying the $4,800 rent and owned their mansion. He didn't just ask her to leave. He pushed her out suitcase in hand because his mother said so. In front of the open door, with neighbors whispering and his mother smiling, Daniel pressed his palm to Emily's shoulder and forced her over the threshold of the very home she scrubbed, lit, and protected. "Get out," he said flatly. "Mom's staying. You're not." Those were the words that cut deeper than any storm. Instead of choosing his wife, he chose control. Instead of truth, he chose pride. His mother, Margaret, stood behind him like a judge, and a woman in red heels drifted in the hall like a shadow of what came next. He thought he had power. What he never knew, what neither of them knew, was that the woman they tossed aside was the one paying the $4,800 rent every month. He didn't know she had signed the papers, sealed the deed, and placed their mansion under her company's name. He didn't know the foundation he stood on was hers. Sometimes the person you push out is the person who owns the door. This is not just another tale of betrayal. It is the sound of a heart breaking and hardening at once. It is a quiet ledger of sacrifice, late nights, hidden transfers, silent signatures turning into justice you can't outrun. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, her voice risks fading back into silence. When you subscribe, you stand with every woman who carried a home on her back and was still told to leave. Please, subscribe now. And in the comments, share where you're watching from. The next page turns fast because what she did next shocked them all. The knife hit the wooden board with rhythmic precision, thud, 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 as Emily Parker sliced strawberries in perfect halves. The golden morning light flooded through the large kitchen windows, catching the shimmer of her wedding ring as she moved. For a moment, the mansion looked like the picture of peace, warm light, quiet music, and the smell of fresh coffee. But peace, in Emily's life, was something she had to build, not something freely given. At 32, Emily was the kind of woman who made calm look easy. A financial consultant with a quiet strength, she carried herself with the discipline of someone who had rebuilt herself before. Behind every gentle smile, there were years of sacrifice, late-night work, and unspoken endurance. To everyone else, she looked like a lucky wife living in luxury. Only she knew that this mansion, every wall, every polished marble tile, stood because she made it possible. She glanced at the digital clock above the oven. 7:02 a.m. Daniel would be down any minute. Her phone buzzed beside the coffee maker, a message alert. She wiped her hands and picked it up. It was a payment confirmation. $4,800 rent paid successfully. Emily stared at the screen for a moment, her chest tightening. Another quiet secret. Another month of keeping her husband's pride intact. A quick flash crossed her mind 1 year ago. Daniel losing his job after the company downsized. She remembered his shaking hands, his broken pride. "Don't tell anyone, Em. Not even Mom. I'll find something soon." She had smiled back then. "Of course," she'd said. "We'll handle it together." But together had slowly turned into alone. She hid the truth easily. Her firm paid her well, and she took extra contracts under her company name, funneling the mansion rent through an LLC she'd quietly registered. Daniel never asked how the bills were handled, and she never told him. Protecting him was her way of loving him. Emily poured his coffee just the way he liked, black with a hint of sugar. She placed it beside his plate and looked around the bright kitchen. The home was spotless. The smell of cinnamon toast filled the air. She checked the bank app again, sighing softly. "Another month," she whispered. The sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from the daily tension she could never quite name. Daniel entered, tall, in his mid-30s, handsome but hardened by frustration. His hair was messy, his shirt half tucked, and his phone glued to his ear. "Good morning," she said gently, offering a smile. He didn't respond. His jaw was tight. "Yeah, Mom. I told you, I'll handle it," he said into the phone, pacing near the counter. His tone wasn't the usual one. It was sharp, defensive. "No, she doesn't need to know that. Just—" His eyes flicked toward Emily before turning away. "Yeah, I'll tell her what you said." He hung up abruptly and exhaled. Emily wiped her hands on a towel. "Everything okay?" Daniel's expression softened just a bit, but the distance in his eyes remained. "It's Mom. She's just worried about us." "Worried?" Emily asked, tilting her head slightly. "About what?" He looked down at the coffee she'd made, then up at her with a strange tension behind his smile. "She just thinks maybe things would be easier if you weren't working so much, that I should handle things again." Emily blinked, confused. "Handle what, exactly?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed again. His mother's name flashed on the screen. "Mom calling." Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he picked it up. "Yes, Mom," he said, walking toward the hallway. His tone grew quieter, then harder. "No, I haven't told her yet." Emily's eyes followed him as he disappeared into the other room, the warmth of the morning suddenly feeling thinner. She turned back to the counter, her reflection staring at her from the polished marble surface. For the first time that morning, her smile faded. The house was still, but the silence carried weight, the kind that warned of something coming. She reached for her phone again, scrolling through her payment history. The numbers blurred. She whispered under her breath, "Maybe one day he'll remember who really built this home." From the hallway, Daniel's voice rose, sharp and impatient. "I told you, Mom, I'll make her understand." Emily froze mid-motion. Her eyes widened slightly. The sound of his words cut deeper than the edge of any knife. Outside, a gentle breeze brushed through the curtains, and the sunlight dimmed just enough to feel like a warning. She didn't know it yet, but that phone call was the first crack in her world. In the next room, Daniel's mother's voice hissed, her words venomous, and her next demand would change everything. The mansion's living room was too quiet for a Saturday afternoon, the kind of quiet that hummed with hidden tension. The air smelled faintly of lemon polish, and the lavender candles Emily had lit earlier, hoping to make it'd feel normal. But normal had stopped existing the moment she arrived. At the center of the room, Daniel sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, eyes darting between his mother and the floor. His mother, Margaret Parker, stood like she owned the air itself, elegant in a crisp beige suit, her expression sharp and cold. 61, but her presence filled every inch of the house. She was the kind of woman who smiled like a blade, and everyone who knew her understood that behind every deer there was an insult waiting to be unwrapped. Emily stood near the kitchen archway, drying her hands with a towel, unsure whether to speak or disappear. Margaret's voice sliced through the silence. "So this is what my son's home looks like now?" She glanced around, lips pressed. "All this, soft furniture, scented candles, girlish colors, it's like a spa, not a man's house." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Mom, please." She cut him off sharply. "No, Daniel. You've changed, and I can see why." Her eyes landed on Emily. "You've let her run everything, haven't you? My son, taking orders from a woman who doesn't even belong in his world." Emily's throat tightened. She opened her mouth, then stopped. Her heart was pounding so loudly she could almost hear it in her ears. Margaret turned fully toward her, her smile curving like a hook. "Emily, dear, I'm sure you mean well. But Daniel was raised in a family that knows class, stability, tradition. And this," she gestured around the room, "doesn't reflect that." Daniel shifted, looking ashamed but saying nothing. Emily steadied her voice. "Mrs. Parker, I understand you care about him, but this house is our home. We built it together." Margaret laughed softly, a cold, dismissive sound. "Built? My dear, this mansion was built on my son's hard work. I helped fund his first business, you know. Without me, none of this would exist." Emily froze. "His first business? The one that failed 2 years ago?" She knew the story. Margaret had given Daniel a loan that turned into a leash. Emily had tried to help Daniel rebuild quietly afterward, never mentioning that her savings kept the mortgage paid. Daniel cleared his throat, uneasy. "Mom, we appreciate your help, but maybe..." "Maybe what?" Margaret snapped. "Maybe I should keep quiet while this woman spends your money decorating the place like a dollhouse. Or should I stay silent while she plays career woman while you..." She caught herself, lowering her tone, "while you're trying to get back on your feet." Daniel's jaw tightened, his hands curled into fists. "Enough, Mom." But Margaret leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough for both of them to hear. "You're losing yourself, Daniel. You used to be strong, ambitious. Look at you now. Letting her run the house, the finances, your life. Is that the man I raised?" Emily blinked, her breath shallow. She wanted to scream, to tell her the truth that Daniel hadn't paid a cent toward this house in a year. But she stayed silent, heart breaking at the sight of him shrinking under his mother's words. Margaret's tone softened, but her eyes glittered. "I'm only saying this because I love you. A wife like that." She let the sentence dangle, turning toward the window as if the view held the rest of her thought. "Will only drag you down." Emily took a step forward. "Mrs. Parker, Margaret's hand shot up, silencing her. "Enough, dear. You've said quite enough for one day." She turned back to Daniel and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch deliberate, claiming, "You deserve peace, son. You've sacrificed enough." Daniel's chest rose and fell, his eyes darting between them. A long pause hung heavy. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, Margaret leaned close to her son's ear. "She doesn't deserve you, Daniel. Tell her to leave." The words struck like lightning, silent but destructive. Emily's hand dropped to her side, the towel slipping to the floor. Daniel's lips parted not in anger, but hesitation. The look in his eyes wasn't just confusion, it was weakness. Outside, wind pressed against the glass panes, the soft sound of distant thunder rolling through. Margaret smiled faintly, turning toward Emily with a practiced kindness. "Now, dear, don't look so startled. Sometimes a woman must know when she's no longer wanted." Emily didn't reply. Her gaze shifted to Daniel, waiting for him to defend her. But his silence was answer enough. And in that stillness, she understood something new. Margaret wasn't trying to protect her son, she was trying to own him. Emily stepped back slowly, her expression calm but her eyes burning. From the corner of the room, the sound of Margaret's phone buzzed. She glanced down, her lips curling. "Sophie's on her way," she said lightly. The name hit the air like poison. And though no one spoke, the tension in the room thickened as if the walls themselves had just learned the truth of what was coming next. Some guests bring flowers, others bring storms. The crash of a wineglass shattered through the quiet dining room. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like spilled blood. Emily froze where she stood, her hands trembling slightly, eyes darting between Daniel and his mother. Dinner had started with silence and ended with war. The table was set beautifully, candles flickering, roasted chicken untouched, soft music humming low. But nothing about this evening felt alive. Daniel sat at the head of the table, his jaw locked, his eyes cold. Beside him, Margaret reclined with the composure of someone who already knew she'd won. Emily stood near the counter, clutching her napkin tightly, her voice barely holding steady. "I don't understand what this is about. Why are you both acting like I don't belong?" "Here?" Margaret gave a quiet, cruel smile. "Because, my dear, you don't." Emily blinked, her voice trembling. "Excuse me?" Daniel exhaled, refusing to meet her eyes. "Emily, Mom's going to stay here for a while. It's her house, too. You should, maybe go stay somewhere else for now." Her body went still, her mind unable to process the words. "What?" she whispered. "You want me to leave my own home?" Margaret leaned forward, her tone sharp and commanding. "He's not asking, Emily. He's telling you. You've had your turn here. Now it's time you stop pretending you're in charge." Emily's eyes burned with disbelief. "Daniel, please tell me you're not agreeing to this." But Daniel didn't move. His hands rested on the table, clenched into fists. Margaret's voice cut through again. "Daniel, say it clearly." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple twitching. "Emily," he said, voice low and strained, "you need to move out. Tonight." The air left Emily's lungs in one sharp gasp. "You're pushing me out of my home?" "It's my mother's decision," he said without looking up. The words felt like knives. Margaret stood now, walking slowly toward Emily, her heels tapping softly against the floor. "You've had him under your spell long enough. I warned him you'd bring him down. And now, I'll clean up the mess you made." Emily stepped back, tears gathering in her eyes but her voice rising, raw and human. "You don't even know what you're talking about. I've held this family together when no one else did. While you were out bragging about your son, I was the one paying the bills." Margaret's expression didn't flinch. "Lies," she said simply. "Daniel, don't let her manipulate you." Daniel stood up, his voice shaking. Just go, Emily." "I'm not leaving," she whispered. "Not this house. Not tonight." Margaret turned sharply to her son, her tone sharp as a whip. "Daniel!" Something in him snapped. "I said go!" he shouted, slamming his hands on the table. The candles flickered violently. Emily flinched. The sound echoed through the hallway. Through the open window, neighbors 2 doors down paused, their murmurs soft under the crickets outside. Margaret gave a small, approving nod. "That's my boy," she murmured. Emily turned to Daniel, eyes wide with heartbreak. "You're really doing this because she told you to?" He avoided her gaze, his breathing uneven. "Just go, Emily, please." Her tears finally fell. Slowly, she reached for her bag, the one she'd left on the counter hours ago, and walked toward the stairs. Each step felt like walking through water. As she reached the bedroom, her mind flickered through flashes, memory after memory. The night Daniel lost his job and cried on her lap. Her transferring money to the landlord every month so he wouldn't know. Signing the property papers through her company name just in case something like this ever happened. A quiet strength started to rise beneath the heartbreak. She pulled open the drawer, grabbed the slim black folder labeled Parker Estate, and slipped it into her bag. Her tears had dried. Downstairs, she could hear Margaret whispering to Daniel, her voice smooth, victorious. "You did the right thing. She was holding you back." Emily appeared at the top of the staircase, suitcase in hand, her face calm now, eerily calm. "You may have pushed me out," she said softly, "but you'll never truly own what you think you do." Margaret tilted her head, smirking. "Oh, I already do, dear." Emily walked past them, her heels steady, her voice low but firm. "You'll see." As the door closed behind her, Daniel sank back into his chair, his mother's hand resting proudly on his shoulder. Outside, Emily stood in the dark driveway, the night air cool on her skin. The lights from the mansion flickered behind her like distant ghosts. She whispered to herself, "Let them enjoy their new home. For now." From inside, Margaret's laughter carried faintly through the window, high, cold, satisfied. But underneath it, something else stirred. The faint creak of pipes, the house's heartbeat shifting, as if it already knew its true owner was the one walking away. In the distance, headlights approached the arrival of another woman, someone Margaret had been expecting. The screech of car tires broke the silence of the morning. A sleek black convertible pulled into the mansion driveway, sunlight glinting off its polished surface. From the driver's side stepped a woman in red heels, confident, stylish, and far too comfortable walking into a home that wasn't hers. Sophie Grant, 28, was Daniel's business associate. That's what he'd always called her. Emily remembered the name, the one that used to pop up on his phone late at night when he said he was working. Now Sophie stood outside Emily's mansion, her suitcase in hand, smiling as Margaret opened the door wide. "Welcome, dear," Margaret said warmly. "You must be exhausted. Come in, Daniel's waiting." The two women hugged as if they'd known each other for years. It was a sharp contrast to the cold politeness Margaret had always reserved for Emily. Inside the car parked across the street, Emily watched through tinted windows. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, her heart thundering. She had come back only to pick up a few forgotten documents, but what she saw instead froze her blood. Sophie. Of course it was Sophie. A wave of memories hit her, the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume on Daniel's collar, the nights he'd turned his phone face down, the messages he deleted too quickly. All the signs she'd chosen to ignore out of love and hope. Her chest ached, but the tears didn't come. Not this time. Inside, Daniel appeared at the doorway, hesitant but smiling weakly as Sophie stepped in. He looked smaller now, unsure, but he let his mother guide the moment. Margaret placed a hand on Sophie's back and said, "Now this is a woman who knows how to support a man's career." Daniel's jaw tensed. "Mom," but Sophie interjected, her tone syrup sweet. "Oh, please. I'm just here to help him get back on track." Margaret laughed, the sound sharp. "You're already doing more than that other one ever did." Daniel didn't respond. He walked away toward the living room, pretending to busy himself with unpacking boxes that Emily had once labeled with love. Sophie followed him, her hand brushing his arm, and he didn't pull away. From outside, Emily's eyes narrowed. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked calm, almost detached, but a storm raged behind her stillness. She watched Sophie touch the doorknob she had polished 1,000 times, watched Margaret's approving smile, watched Daniel's hesitation melt into compliance. She could almost hear Margaret's voice in her head. "This house was never yours." Emily finally exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the car window. "You're right," she whispered. "It's mine." Her hand reached into the passenger seat, pulling the thin black folder she had kept safe all week, the property papers. Her name, bold and legal, printed across the top. Inside the mansion, Sophie twirled her keys on her finger, laughing softly. "Feels like home already." Margaret smiled. "It should, dear. It's all yours now." Emily's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Not for long," she murmured. She started the engine, the car humming quietly as she drove off, the mansion shrinking in the rearview mirror. The setting sun painted the house in orange light, beautiful, deceitful, temporary. And somewhere behind the glass, Sophie's laughter echoed faintly, the sound of a woman stepping into a life that wasn't truly hers. But even laughter, Emily thought, sounds different when the ground beneath you doesn't belong to you, because soon the ground itself would move. The apartment door slammed shut behind Emily, the echo sharp against the bare walls. She leaned against it, chest rising and falling, her pulse still racing from what she had seen. Sophie in her home, Margaret in her kitchen, Daniel watching it happen. The apartment was small, quiet, and nothing like the mansion she had built her dreams around. But it was hers, free of their voices, free of their control. Still, the silence pressed against her ears, demanding she face what had just happened. She dropped her purse on the counter and walked toward the window. From the 12th floor, the city lights looked distant, like scattered promises. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, slowly. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. "Emily Davis?" the voice said on the other end. "Yes? This is Rachel Moore." Emily's shoulders relaxed slightly. Rachel was more than her lawyer. She was an old college friend, sharp and loyal. Emily hadn't heard from her in weeks. Rachel continued, "I got your message about needing the property documents checked. I went through everything you sent me." Emily. Her tone shifted, calm, but edged with surprise. "You do realize the deed to that mansion is still under your LLC, right?" Emily blinked, frozen. "What?" Rachel laughed softly, disbelief in her voice. You bought that house through your consulting company, not jointly. The mortgage, the taxes, the ownership, all under Davis Consulting Holdings, LLC, and you're the sole shareholder. Meaning, Emily whispered, barely breathing. I own it. Rachel smiled through the phone. Exactly. You don't rent it, you own it. Completely. The words hit like electricity, running through her spine, awakening something fierce. She pressed a hand to her chest, almost afraid to believe it. A flood of memories came rushing back, sitting with her accountant 2 years ago, taking advice to purchase the property under her business for tax advantages. She'd done it quietly, never realizing how much that decision would one day protect her. Rachel's voice softened. You don't have to let them walk over you, Emily. You have all the power legally and financially. They're living in your mansion. Emily's eyes sharpened. The fear, the pain, the humiliation, it all began to dissolve. In its place rose something colder, steadier. I see, she said slowly. So, if I stop making payments, they'll lose everything within days, Rachel finished, and they won't even see it coming. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The air in the apartment felt different now, charged, alive. Emily walked to the table, found the black folder she'd been carrying since that night, and opened it. Her name, Emily Davis Parker, glimmered across the top of every page. Her reflection in the glass window stared back at her, no longer broken, no longer pleading. A quiet smile touched her lips, the kind that carried both pain and power. Let them enjoy their last night, she whispered. Rachel hesitated. Emily, what are you planning? Emily closed the folder gently, the click of the lock echoing like a final decision. I'm not planning anything, she said softly. I'm simply taking back what's mine. Outside, lightning flashed faintly in the distance, not violent, but promising. And somewhere across the city, in that grand mansion glowing in the dark, the people who had pushed her out were sitting at her table, laughing over her dinner, unaware that by sunrise, the walls around them would start to crumble. Because sometimes revenge doesn't arrive screaming. Sometimes it knocks politely with a lawyer's letter in hand. The sound of laughter echoed through the grand halls of the mansion, loud, hollow, and out of place. Dishes clinked, champagne fizzed, and music played from the living room speakers. Sophie twirled across the marble floor in her silk robe, holding a glass high. To new beginnings, she cheered. Margaret clapped lightly, eyes glinting with satisfaction. To family finally restored, she said proudly, lifting her own glass. Daniel smiled weakly, seated on the couch, pretending to enjoy it. He looked around the house, Emily's house, but something about it felt wrong. The air didn't carry the warmth it once did. It was too quiet in the corners, too cold even in light. A faint drip, drip, drip came from the kitchen sink. He frowned, turning his head toward the sound. The faucet was leaking again, strange, since Emily had fixed it just a month before. Daniel, Sophie called playfully, waving her glass. Don't look so gloomy. You should be grateful. Everything's working out. You. Have your mom. Your career's getting back on track. He interrupted her softly. And Emily? The name made Margaret stiffen. We agreed not to talk about her, she said, her tone sharp. She's gone, and good riddance. That woman poisoned this home. Sophie smirked. Besides, she's not your problem anymore. You have me now. Daniel forced a smile, but the guilt was plain in his eyes. He took a slow sip of wine, but it didn't wash away the taste of regret. From the window, sunlight spilled across the dining table, catching a small pile of unopened mail. Margaret noticed and reached for it. Bills, bills, she muttered, flipping through the envelopes. Then she stopped at one marked in bold. Notice of lease non-renewal. What's this? She murmured, opening it. Daniel looked up. Probably junk mail, but her face tightened as she read. It says, the lease won't be renewed after this month. Sophie frowned. Lease? What lease? I thought. This place was paid off. Daniel stood quickly, confusion spreading across his face. It is. I mean, Emily handled all that. Margaret scoffed. Handled? You mean she let her name sit on the paperwork while you paid for everything? He didn't answer. The silence thickened. Margaret waved the letter dismissively and tossed it onto the table. Nonsense. I'll call the landlord and sort this out. The dripping from the kitchen grew louder, steady and mocking. Drip, Drip, drip. Sophie leaned against the wall, bored. Do whatever you want, Mrs. Parker. Just make sure the pool stays open this weekend. I invited friends over. Margaret didn't even respond. She was already dialing her phone, muttering under her breath. Daniel's eyes wandered to the hallway, to the spot where Emily used to hang her paintings. They were gone now, leaving empty hooks. The walls looked naked, stripped of life. As the phone rang endlessly on speaker, Margaret crossed her arms, annoyed. Ugh, no answer. Typical landlord behavior. They'll regret ignoring me. The faucet gave one last metallic groan and then stopped dripping. Silence. Then faintly a voice. Not in the room, not from the phone, but layered across the narration, calm and cold. Yes, call the landlord, Margaret. I'd love to hear what she says. The champagne bubbles went flat. The air turned still. Margaret frowned, glancing around the room. Did you hear that? Daniel shook his head. Hear what? She pressed her lips together, uneasy, then scoffed. Never mind. I'll call again later. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the trees. The mansion's lights flickered once, just long enough for the chandelier to shimmer like a warning. Daniel sank back onto the couch, rubbing his forehead. Sophie scrolled on her phone. Margaret stared at the silent phone line, unaware that with every passing hour, their time in that mansion was quietly running out. And somewhere, across town, Emily closed her laptop, watching her lawyer's email notification appear. Lease termination confirmed. Her quiet smile returned. Let the house remind them who it belongs to. The phone rang on speaker, sharp and shrill in the silence. Margaret sat upright on the couch, her eyes blazing. Honestly, some people don't know who they're dealing with, she muttered. Daniel sat nearby, tense and pale, while Sophie scrolled on her phone, pretending not to care. Relax, Mother, Daniel said softly. It's probably just a clerical mistake. Emily probably forgot to. Margaret's glare cut him off. Don't you say that woman's name in my house. The irony hung heavy. The call clicked, and a bright, polite voice answered. Good afternoon, Maple Realty Management. This is Tina speaking. How may I help you today? Yes, Margaret said crisply. This is Margaret Parker. My son and I are living at the Maple Heights property, the mansion on Mean, Willow Lane. We just received a ridiculous notice about lease termination. I'd like to speak with whoever made that error. Of course, the woman replied calmly. Can I have your name again, ma'am? Margaret leaned closer to the speaker. Margaret, Parker. My son is Daniel Parker. We've been residents for over a year now. This letter says our lease won't be renewed, which is absurd because we own that house. There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable silence, then the sound of typing. I'm sorry, Mrs. Parker, Tina said finally, her voice polite but firm. According to our system, that property isn't owned by your son. It's managed through a private company. Margaret frowned. Private company? Which company? One moment, please, Tina said, her fingers clicking rapidly in the background. Sophie rolled her eyes. She probably means that fake business Emily used to brag about. Daniel looked down at the floor, his fingers gripping. His knees. Tina returned. Yes, the property is under Davis Consulting Holdings, LLC. The owner decided not to renew the lease. Margaret blinked. Owner? There must be some mistake. That woman doesn't own a thing. My son paid for, Tina interrupted gently. Ma'am, I understand this might be confusing, but the decision is final. The owner has all the legal rights to terminate the stay. Margaret's tone hardened. Then I demand to speak directly with this so-called owner. Another brief pause. Papers shuffled. Then the voice on the other end came back, sounding careful, almost hesitant. You can, Mrs. Parker, Tina said. The owner's name is Emily Davis Parker. The room froze. Daniel's head snapped up, color draining from his face. Sophie stopped mid-scroll, eyes wide. Margaret's hand clenched the edge of the couch. What did you just say? She hissed. Emily Davis Parker, Tina repeated gently. She's the listed owner and primary tenant. She made the decision to end the lease effective next week. Margaret's breath came out in short, angry bursts. This is nonsense. She doesn't have the right. I'm afraid she does, Tina said. We've already received her signed authorization. You'll be contacted by our legal department for the handover process. The line went dead with a soft click. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the steady hum of the chandelier above them. Then Sophie whispered, half in disbelief, half in fear, "She owns the house?" Margaret stood abruptly, her face pale but her voice trembling with rage. "No, no, she doesn't. This is a game, and I won't let her win." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his voice weak. "Mom, what if it's not a game?" Margaret turned toward him slowly, eyes narrowing. "Then she's about to learn what happens when you humiliate a Parker." Her voice shook the air, a last act of pride before the inevitable fall. Outside, the mansion's lights flickered again, dimming for a moment. And miles away, in her quiet apartment, Emily's phone vibrated with a message from the property manager. Notice delivered successfully. She smiled faintly and whispered to herself, "Now, let's see how fast they crumble." And crumble, they would piece by piece. "Explain this to me," Daniel's voice thundered through the mansion, his hand gripping the crumpled lease notice. The paper shook as much as his voice. Margaret stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, face hard. "Calm yourself, Daniel. This is clearly a mistake. That girl could never afford this house without you." Daniel paced, restless. "Then why is her name on every document? Why does the property company recognize her as the owner?" His words cracked under the weight of disbelief. Sophie, seated on the couch, tried to stay out of the argument, but her curiosity showed. Maybe she lied to everyone. "She," said casually, eyes flicking toward the letter. "You know how clever she can be." Daniel stopped pacing, his mind spinning. Clever. The word hit him like a sting. Memories flooded in the nights. Emily stayed up late doing extra work. The quiet way she always handled bills, her tired smiles when he bragged to friends about his home. He sank into a chair, voice low. "She used to say everything was fine. Even after my company failed, she never once complained." His tone softened, the anger slipping away, replaced by confusion and shame. What if she was the one holding it all together? Margaret's sharp voice cut through. "Don't be foolish, Daniel. She's manipulating you. She probably planned this to embarrass us." But Daniel's eyes were distant now, not on his mother, not on Sophie, but on the door Emily once walked out of. "Maybe I was wrong," he whispered. He reached for his phone, fingers trembling. He found Emily's name and pressed. "Call." It rang once, twice, then voicemail. Her calm voice echoed through the room. "Leave a message." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Emily, please call me back." Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, soft but growing. Some storms don't warn you before they strike. The echo of a punching bag filled the quiet gym, thud, thud, thud. Emily's fists hit harder with every swing, sweat glistening on her skin, breath steady and fierce. The woman who once whispered apologies now moved with focus, not fury. Her pain had turned into rhythm, her heartbreak into power. Weeks had passed since she walked out of the mansion. No more sleepless nights waiting for calls. No more tears. Just silence and rebuilding. By day, she sat in her office, surrounded by paperwork and clients, her calm confidence returning with every deal signed. Her name, Emily Davis Parker, appeared on contracts and company headers, the mark of someone who had quietly owned more than anyone knew. By night, she met with her therapist, a kind, middle-aged woman named Dr. Harris. In one session, Emily stared at her own reflection and said softly, "I spent years taking care of everyone else. I forgot how to take care of me." Dr. Harris smiled. "You're remembering now." At home, Emily's small apartment had changed. New plants, a painting half finished on the wall, light where there had once been emptiness. She opened her dresser one night, taking out her wedding ring. It gleamed under the lamp, a symbol of both love and loss. She stared at it for a long moment, then placed it gently in the drawer. "Some things," she whispered, "don't belong to me anymore." Meanwhile, in the mansion, Daniel's frustration grew. Bills piled up, Sophie's voice sharpened, and Margaret's arrogance began to crack. But Emily's world was rising, step by steady step. She sat at her desk one morning, pen in hand, her lawyer on the phone. The document in front of her read, "Property transfer, full ownership confirmed." She smiled faintly. Let the curtain rise. And miles away, the walls of her old home began to shake, not from weather, but from fate. The pounding on the door was loud enough to shake the chandelier. Bang! 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 Sophie jolted awake on the couch, her silk robe slipping off her shoulder. Margaret stormed into the hallway, furious, hair unkempt and voice sharp. Who dares knock like that at this hour? Daniel stumbled down the stairs, half-dressed, his face pale. The knocking came again, firmer, colder. Bang! Bang! He opened the door. 2 uniformed officers and a man in a dark suit stood outside. The man held a clipboard, his voice calm but authoritative. Good morning. We're here on behalf of Maple Realty Management. This property has been legally repossessed. You need to vacate immediately. Margaret's mouth fell open. Repossessed? Are you insane? This is my son's house. The man handed Daniel a sealed envelope. Eviction notice, effective today. You're required to leave within the hour. Daniel froze, his fingers trembling as he unfolded the papers. His name wasn't on a single line. The ownership section read clearly, Emily Davis Parker. For a long moment, no one breathed. Sophie let out a disbelieving laugh. That can't be right. She left. She doesn't own anything. But the bailiff ignored her. The owner submitted proper documentation weeks ago. We're just here to enforce it. Margaret's face turned red, then white. This is a mistake. My son's wife couldn't possibly. Daniel interrupted quietly, voice breaking. She could. His mind spun with memories, Emily signing forms he never cared to read. Her calm face whenever he said, You wouldn't understand business. All those times he thought she was just a good wife, she was a strategist, a protector, and now, the one holding the strings. Sir, the bailiff said, looking at Daniel, we'll give you some time to gather your things. Margaret stepped forward, trembling with rage. You don't understand, that woman tricked us. I'll call her myself. The officer shook his head. Ma'am, contact won't change the order. The property has been legally transferred. You are trespassing as of this morning. Sophie threw her hands in the air. This is insane. Daniel, say something. He didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the signature at the bottom of the page. Emily's handwriting, steady and deliberate. The truth hit him like a collapse inside his chest. Margaret shouted again. Who does she think she is? Sophie's voice cut through, shrill and panicked. Then who owns this place? And from somewhere outside, a voice soft, calm, unmistakable carried across the morning air. I do. All 3 turned toward the driveway. Emily stood beside her car, composed and silent, dressed in a simple black suit. Her eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time, he couldn't find a single word. Her presence filled the space, not with anger, but with quiet finality. She didn't need to yell. The silence spoke enough. Margaret's lips quivered. Sophie's expression shattered. Emily took one slow step forward and said, You wanted me gone. Now it's your turn. The officers stepped aside, ready to do their job. Daniel's shoulders sank as the weight of his choices came crashing down. Emily turned to leave, her voice faint but steady. Don't worry. I'll make sure you have plenty of time to remember this day. As her car pulled away, the wind picked up, scattering the eviction papers across the lawn. Margaret screamed after her, You'll regret this, Emily. But the mansion, once full of pride and noise, now stood cold, echoing with emptiness. Inside, Daniel fell to his knees, gripping the letter. His mother stood frozen, and Sophie stared in silent horror. And miles away, Emily's phone buzzed a message from her lawyer. Eviction completed successfully. She smiled faintly. Justice had a new address, and it wasn't theirs anymore. The mansion's iron gates stood open, the morning sun pouring through like a spotlight on shame. Margaret, Daniel, and Sophie stood at the top of the driveway, the same driveway where Emily had once carried groceries, smiled through exhaustion, and waved goodbye to her husband every morning. Now she returned as a stranger, calm, steady, unshaken. Her black car stopped midway up the drive, engine humming softly. When she stepped out, silence wrapped around them like fog. Margaret was the first to speak, her voice sharp and brittle. How dare you come here after what you've done? You humiliated my family. Emily met her eyes without flinching. Your family humiliated itself. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried clean, controlled cutting. Daniel took a hesitant step forward. He looked different now, smaller, lost. His shirt was wrinkled, his face pale. Emily, he said quietly, please. We didn't know. Mom thought You never asked, she interrupted. The words hit harder than any scream could. He lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. Margaret's rage only grew. You tricked my son. You used him. I protected him, Emily said sharply. From failure, from debt, from himself. Every check that paid for this house, every repair, every bill, came from me. And I never asked for anything back. Until now. Sophie stepped forward, arms crossed, trying to hide her shaking voice. You can't just throw us out like this. What kind of woman does that? Emily turned toward her slowly. The kind of woman your lies built, she said simply. Enjoyed the luxury, didn't you? Every wall, every floor, all mine. Sophie's face flushed. You think this makes you better? No, Emily replied. It makes me free. The air grew heavy again. Daniel's lips parted, searching for words that wouldn't come. Finally, he whispered, Emily, I'm sorry. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since that night. You pushed me out because someone else told you to. That was the moment I realized you never loved me, you just loved control. He stepped closer, voice trembling. If I could take it back, she cut him off softly. You can't. For a moment they stood in silence, the ghost of what once was lingering between them. Then Emily drew a breath, turned toward her car and said quietly, I've already forgiven you, but I'll never forget what it taught me. She opened the car door, the metallic click echoing like the end of a chapter. Margaret suddenly shouted, You'll regret this. You'll crawl back. You'll see. Her voice broke mid-sentence. She staggered backward, clutching her chest. Mom, Daniel cried, rushing. Toward her, Sophie screamed. Emily froze for a heartbeat, watching the chaos unfold. Then she took one last look at the house, not with anger, but with release. She whispered under her breath, Every storm clears the air. Her car engine roared to life. She drove away slowly, the mansion shrinking behind her, leaving Daniel on his knees beside his mother, panic rising, guilt swallowing him whole. And far ahead, the sun glinted off Emily's windshield, a quiet promise that her story wasn't over yet. The mansion was silent. No laughter, no arguments. Just the hollow sound of emptiness echoing through its halls. The grand chandelier hung like a forgotten memory, catching sunlight that no one cared to admire anymore. 2 weeks had passed since the eviction. Grass had begun to grow wild across the driveway. Dust layered the furniture, and the air carried the faint scent of loss. Inside, Daniel stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by moving boxes, half packed, half abandoned. His mother, Margaret, sat quietly on the couch, her posture frail, her once commanding voice reduced to whispers. Her eyes looked distant, haunted. Across the room, a pile of letters lay scattered, all stamped final notice. Their accounts had been frozen, their savings drained after Margaret's failed investments. The business contacts she once bragged about had vanished the moment their wealth disappeared. Daniel rubbed his temples, exhaustion heavy in his voice. Mom, we need to sell something, anything. Margaret looked up slowly. Sell what, Daniel? The cars? The jewelry? They're not even in our names anymore. Her tone cracked, bitter and defeated. We were living in a dream that wasn't ours. Her words hung in the air like dust motes, catching what little light remained. A car door slammed outside. Daniel turned quickly toward the window. Sophie stood on the front steps, suitcase in hand. She looked different now. Colder. Sharper. You're leaving? Daniel asked quietly, stepping toward her. Sophie didn't look at him. I didn't sign up for this, she said. No money, no stability. You're not the man you were when we met. He laughed bitterly. I was never that man. I was just pretending for you, for her, for everyone. Sophie's lips tightened. Then I guess the show's over. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking across the cracked stone path, the same path Emily once walked with grace. The front door creaked shut behind her. Silence returned. Margaret let out a faint, broken laugh. Even she's smarter than us. Daniel didn't answer. He just stared at the walls, at the ghosts of his mistakes, until a faint noise outside caught his attention. A familiar car. He stepped to the window and froze. Emily. She moved with quiet confidence, her black coat flowing behind her as she approached the door with a key. Her key. The officers had already transferred the house back to her name. Now, she had come to reclaim it in person. The door opened with a low click. The sound carried through the empty space like a memory coming home. Daniel stood frozen as she walked in, calm and collected. Her gaze swept across the room, the dust, the emptiness, the faces that once looked down on her. "It's strange," she said softly, "how everything looks bigger when it's hollow." Margaret bowed her head, silent. Emily stepped forward, placed her hand on the front door, and looked at Daniel one last time. "They thought they broke me," she said quietly, "but I was the foundation beneath their feet." With that, she turned the key in the lock click. The sound echoed through every room, final and cold. Outside, the wind stirred the fallen leaves, sweeping them away from the steps as if erasing the last traces of those who didn't belong. Inside, Daniel whispered her name, but she didn't turn back. And somewhere, deep in the house, a single light flickered back on the sign of a new beginning. The sky burned gold as the sun dipped below the horizon. Emily sat on the balcony of her new penthouse, the city stretching endlessly beneath her. The evening breeze lifted her hair gently, carrying the faint hum of traffic and life. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about survival, only stillness. Her phone lay beside her, the screen glowing softly. A photo her wedding day. She and Daniel smiling, hands clasped, promises made under an arch of white roses. For a moment she studied it quietly, tracing the edges of their frozen happiness. Then, with a calm breath, she whispered, "When you give love, give it freely, but never let it cost your dignity." She pressed delete. The screen went black, her reflection staring back at her older, wiser, freer. Inside, the wind brushed the curtains like a sigh of relief. Every choice, every scar, every quiet night she'd spent, wondering if she was enough, it had led her here. Her voice softened, almost like a letter to her past self. Forgiveness isn't about letting them back in. It's about setting yourself free. She reached for her journal, opened a fresh page and wrote, "I once built a home for love. Now, I build a life for peace." The city lights blinked on below, each one a story, a heartbeat, a reminder that endings are only beginnings wearing different clothes. Emily smiled faintly, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. In the distance, thunder rolled again, not threatening, but cleansing, as if the sky itself was washing away the past. And as the last streak of sunlight disappeared, she whispered, "Peace is the sweetest revenge." But peace, she knew, was just the beginning. Morning sunlight spilled across a bright community center, laughter echoing off the walls. Emily stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, surrounded by women, some young, some older, all starting over. "Your donation helped us open this place," one volunteer said gratefully. "We call it the Second Key Foundation." Emily smiled, humbled. "It's not just mine," she said softly. "It belongs to every woman who thought she'd never start again." Photos of women rebuilding their lives lined the walls. Lawyers, teachers, mothers, each one carried the same light in their eyes. Emily now had strength after breaking. A camera crew approached her gently for a short interview. "What inspired you to create this fund?" Emily paused, thinking carefully. Then she said, "Because I lost everything once, but what I really lost was myself. And when I found her again, I promised I'd never let another woman forget who she is." The interviewer smiled. "That's powerful." Emily nodded. "They lost a mansion," she said, her tone calm but resolute. "I found myself." Cut to a slow montage, Emily walking through the mansion one last time, before selling it, her footsteps echoing against empty marble floors. She locks the front door, drops the keys into an envelope labeled "Donation Sale, Foundation Fund," and walks away. Her silhouette fades into sunlight as soft piano music swells. The final image, Emily at a small, bright house with open windows. She turns a brand new silver key in a new door. Inside, laughter, warmth, peace. Her voice carries softly over the last notes of music. "Love didn't break me. It rebuilt me." Sometimes losing what you love is how you find who you are. The piano fades into silence and the screen cuts to black. Her story ends, but her legacy begins.